As a woman of color, an immigrant, and a long-term counselor educator, I have a deep interest in contributing towards effecting positive change in the K-12 educational system. School counselors are uniquely positioned to advocate for social justice for all students. But are they truly able to do so? If so, how? And if not, why is that the case?
I think that's really the entire role of being a school counselor, is you're acting in the student's best interest. And when there's an injustice, then you fight for the student and you do what you can to right that wrong.
I think at this point in time, and in the context that we are in, school counselors are very passionate about the social justice work and equity work, especially with COVID highlighting so many of the inequities that we knew about, but it's been exacerbated since the onset of the pandemic. And counselors are very attuned and very aware, and they're very much passionate about taking actionable steps to ensure that their students of color are thriving and are receiving what they need.
My idea of what I need to do to be a change agent changes, but I think the thing that is always true is that change agents fight for social justice, that we fight for the rights of all people, and that young children deserve to be treated with love and kindness and respect.
I really try my best to advocate for every single kid. I think a lot of them do not have a voice, or they don't know how to use their voice yet, so I am their voice.
Historically, equity of access, opportunity, and resources have all been elusive for students and families who are underrepresented, low income, or marginalized. Unjust practices and disparities remain pervasive. School counselors contend with systemic inequities that are embedded in our society, of which the public school system is a microcosm.
The social context and the economic context in which students live and operate shapes their educational outcomes. So when we look at students, we can't just say, oh, these are Asian students, so they must be part of a model minority. We have to look at the specific and unique context of children. So when we talk about social justice, that is critically important. Sort of recognizing the supports that some students have, the supports that some students may not have, and how do we sort of stand in the gap to help children and to eliminate barriers.
This is a largely Latino community. I'd say our students are about 90% Latino. They're low income for the most part. We're about 90% free and reduced lunch, and about 60% of our students are below the federal poverty level, which is twice as poor, twice as low income. Also, many of our parents are immigrants. They don't have much formal education, maybe elementary school in another country, and that's it. They all love their kids and care about their kids a lot, so they just need help, navigating the system, basically.
Whether it be students, parents that work 2-3 jobs and are not available for their kids, or low-income families trying to find food to feed all their kids, or families that have parents that have been deported.
I believe school is like a microcosm of our country and our world, which is money is the fuel, right? Money is the fuel for opportunity. There are students that have certain privileges that are helping them academically. Homework is a big issue, right? If I have, if my parents are both college educated, and one of them is a teacher and another one is like a nurse, they can help me easily with my homework, versus if I have two students that just recently immigrated from a foreign country and English is not their first language, and I can't even read the homework that was assigned to me, or barely read the homework assigned to me, and I have nobody to help me. again, that's inequitable, right?
I see students that are dealing with social justice issues like poverty or having to have single parents or any of the things that are related to dealing in poverty, which my students do a lot.
If the child didn't eat the night before, we have situations where like some children don't eat, right? How can we teach a child that's hungry? If a child didn't sleep the night before, how can we effectively teach a child that's not sleeping? If the child is dealing with trauma at home, how can we deal with a child when there's trauma like really in front of them?
Education can't be focused just on mainstream children. We've got to recognize what the needs are of a variety of children that are entering school systems and need to be educated.
The pandemic has not only laid bare systemic social injustices, but also exacerbated them, and thereby made the job of the school counselor that much more complex and challenging.
I think now more than ever, school counselors will be called upon to focus on some of those socio-emotional needs because we've had an unprecedented crisis worldwide, and it's impacted children because they've been out of school. There are a number of children that are suffering from learning loss. And that is compounded with the grief that many children have experienced, whether it's through their parents' loss of employment. If their parents are essential employees, they may have lost homes, they may have had to move. If their family members are essential employees, they have been probably impacted by COVID in terms of watching people get sick. Sort of deathly ill, possibly even experience multiple losses. And so children are traumatized by that. Traumatized children cannot learn.
The pandemic has absolutely changed my role as a school counselor in many ways. I certainly feel and am much more reactive than I have been pretty much every year of my career. When I first became a school counselor, I could be and had the space to be and the time to be very proactive, very preventative in my programming, in my daily responsibilities. I had plenty of time to organize data, collect data, create assessments, and really shape my school culture. And I feel like the pandemic is really shaping the school culture for me now, for my team now, in a way where we are constantly responding to something.
So the needs for our students really shifted in terms of mental health. A lot of our students have been isolated. A lot of their family members have unfortunately passed away from COVID, or they were themselves experiencing illness, depression, anxiety. It was really difficult, and it still is.
As a result of the pandemic and coming back in person this year, I've found that a lot of more time has been dedicated to serving students who are experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression at our school site. So for example, within the first month and a half of school, I performed about 12 risk assessments, whereas a typical year, it'd probably land around 2 to 3 at that point. And so it has shifted my role a lot more from kind of being able to focus on, hey, like, let's introduce the new school year, and handling mostly kind of more scheduling or class changes, to meeting the socio-emotional needs and connecting students and families with kind of a deeper resource of services.
The American School Counselor Association has provided a comprehensive description of the school counselor's role. However, it is neither fully understood by school personnel, nor is it always possible to fully carry out.
A school counselor is proactive and is part of the educational leadership team and the school counselor delivers a developmentally appropriate, comprehensive school counseling program, K-12, to all students in a school. And that is very different from perhaps the guidance counselor of old that many of us remember, who may have just worked with those at the high school level who are applying to college, or those who might have had disciplinary trouble. And we know very often 20, 30 years ago, we didn't always have school counselors at the elementary level. So today's school counselor works with all students.
When students are in training to be a school counselor, they have to develop their vision and mission for themselves. So their career goal has to be have to include the leadership, have to include advocacy. So we're helping students to understand what they can do to advocate, what will be an ideal counselor. It's not just a good listening. Good listening is important part, but also understand the problem and sensitive to issues related to social justice, sensitive to issues related to diversity.
And the burden, like in terms of responsibility, falls on them to have conversations with teachers about what an equitable classroom might look like. How to keep equity in mind when they're interacting with children, all of those pieces, because oftentimes adults who are not able to engage with kids in that one-on-one manner and really get to know them have a different understanding of what equity is, and they think equity sometimes is equality, and it's not. It's two totally different things. And so, the counselor, oftentimes has to play that role of advocate to have them understand these are the challenges that this child is facing, and these are the challenges that this child is facing. We cannot give them the same thing, even if the challenges are similar. The circumstances in which they've experienced it may be vastly different. And with that understanding, we have to build things in a way that are equitable for all children.
I think in our school district, the role of the counselor is perceived in two lights. One, we're supportive of social emotional learning, and one, academic and vocational career objectives. So I hope that we are perceived as a support for both teachers, staff, students, and parents, and that we can help be that bridge to help students be successful in both their social emotional endeavors and their academic aspirations.
There's a bit of understanding this is what a school counselor does. However, I think with the full scope of what we do with the academics, the social emotional, the college career readiness, I think there's still a lack of awareness with colleagues and students.
The counselor's intentions are well when they want to do a lot of case managing from the referrals that administrators and teachers and probably parents give them. However, what's impacting that work is the crisis situations that are unforeseen, and it could happen on any given day. And an example of this is we've had to deal with a lot of suicidal ideation that kids are presenting. And again, that's just one example of many crisis situations that have come and presented themselves while we've been in person.
The school counselor's work really happens at the tier 1 level, that prevention level, as we deliver the classroom instruction to all students. And then as we look at the data and identify students who might need more, then we do small group work around whether it's academics or something social and emotional or career development. And then as we look to tier 3, that's when we engage with our school social workers and school psychologists and outside resources to do more. So as we think about what's equitable for all students, we want them all to have access to all of these professionals who can do this work.
At times, social justice advocacy can be sidelined due to a number of barriers.
As a school counselor, I wanted to be able to advocate for kids, right? And I wanted to do it in a way that was equitable. But as an early school counselor in the work, our tendency is to become very involved with the kids who are presenting with their hair on fire, right? So these are your kids who maybe have higher level needs, complex needs. And so, one of the challenges sometimes as a school counselor is to keep equity and social justice in mind when you are the resource, because sometimes we forget about that. And because we become really focused on the students who need our help more or who have a higher level of presenting need, sometimes that means that you don't get to do the tier 1 work. If we're looking at MTSS, you don't necessarily get to do the tier 1 work as much as you want or as much as you should. You're not getting into the classrooms as often as you'd like to do guidance lessons because you're hyper-focused on getting the needs met of the kids who are the tier 3s because, again, there's a lack of resources. How do we ensure that all kids have access to us, especially if we're the only one of us on the campus? How do we ensure that all kids have access to us? How do we make it so that we're accessible?
I was assigned to a middle school. I was the only counselor there for 1,000 kids. And we all know that is not the standard of school counselors and the ratio. But I virtually was putting out fires my first few years there. And that was when also the gang activity was, at its height.
Right now, depending upon the state you're in, or even just the location that you're in, you may have to deal with certain barriers that are put in front of you in terms of censoring what you can and cannot do, or what you can and cannot say, as it relates to social justice work.
I mean, it's quite unfortunate that we don't, at least at my school, we're not able to, we don't have the time to do that. We would absolutely love to get more involved with our students when it comes to social justice. It's just, we're so busy with so many other things, and our caseload, we're just too compacted. But whenever students do come in, we just really motivate them and empower them, and whatever they need, we're right there ready to help.
Although there are some school counselors who prioritize the practice of social justice, the reality on the ground is that social justice is mainly defined in a narrow school context.
Part of the challenge I think that school counselors have is that people don't know what they do, because so much of what they do is shrouded in confidentiality. And so administrators sometimes don't know how to use counselors because, number one, there's a lot we can't talk about, but number two, we haven't done as great a job advocating for what we do and how we're best used. So in the absence of that, people say, oh, we need a substitute. Oh, would you monitor the cafeteria? And so helping administrators better understand the roles of school counselors and other people in schools understand the role of school counselors, I think is really important.
School counselors can face lots of different challenges in trying to do this work, to be leaders, to be advocates. I think you can kind of think of it almost like Bronfenbrenner, in those kind of concentric circles. The first set of challenges, I think, really do come from within. So part of it is, am I willing to do this work? Am I willing to be perhaps a voice that is different than other voices in my school community? It's hard to be that voice. It is taxing. It can be scary, right? Especially if someone thinks, well, if I rock the boat, is it going to, in some way, shape, or form, potentially affect my job security? So I think that first obstacle or challenge in doing advocacy work or being a leader really does come from within. Can I do this? And then there's that next rung out, right? So thinking about not just my own maybe hesitation or fear around it, but then what is the support in the school community? What are the implications in the larger community? And I think it's important to think about somewhere in those circles, issues around family of origin. I think for some people, it can be hard to step out of or step away from to grow from some of the things that we had in our early upbringing that really inform our perspectives still.
I believe that some of the barriers include, again, not knowing themselves deeply. There's a certain power to knowing who you are and what you bring to the table. And that also includes, things that you may not know about yourself that as a counselor you need to explore, because that might be something that could hurt the relationship between a counselor and a client. And one of those things could be, bias. It could be colorblindness. It could be, misconceptions. It could be stereotypes of who we are serving, right? So another barrier could be, just the supports that, counselors have. If they do not have the support within the organization that they are in. I feel, counselors cannot work in a silo or on their own island, if you will. So thought partnership, mentorship, support, if those are not there, then that could definitely hurt the relationship between counselors and clients ultimately.
Barriers for school counselors to engage in social justice work include fear, for sure, fear of causing harm, fear of getting it wrong, fear of others viewing our work as controversial or threatening. And I think these are real fears. They're genuine fears. They're justifiable fears. And I think that for many school counselors, it's a matter of figuring out how to still do the work while being nervous and cautious, and how to continue doing the work, knowing that every educator, every parent, every administrator is not going to be on board. And so I think figuring out how to still do it and still get it done is one of the trickiest parts of social justice work in school counseling.
Change is hard. People don't like change. And if you've been in school since you were 4 and now you work in school and you've always been in this school, then the way we do things is comfortable and you're used to it. And sometimes when I think about some new idea or a different way we could do things, I have to really pause and be like, my brain cannot even understand how that would work different, but I've got to be open to the idea that it could. And so I think fear is often a barrier, fear of pushback, fear of parents not liking what you're doing, fear of not having support from your administrator. This is hard work. And so the way that we counter that barrier is to find our compatriots, our colleagues in our building that also want to do this good work, and use them to rely on and to be a group that is working towards change so that you're not solo. And if you really truly have nobody at your school, which for most people I think won't be true, but if you really truly don't have anybody, then find that person in your district, in your community, on Twitter, in your alumni group from grad school, whoever it takes, to make sure that you feel like you have kind of a group that is working on this with you, because I think really that's the only way to keep going.
Social justice advocacy still remains to be fully embraced, not only in words, but through meaningful action.
As school counselors, we are usually the first ones to understand and know what is happening within our school community. So when a student is coming to us, or multiple students are coming to us and really expressing their concerns of things that are being said or done that is racist to them, really stepping back and advocating for one, looking at the school system as a whole and saying, is this incident something that has happened on multiple occasions to various different people or even one person, and really looking to see if it's a systems issue, right? And saying, do we have policies in place specifically for racism? Like, does our bully policy include and clearly define racism so that way it is explicit? And if it doesn't, bringing that to the attention of administration, bringing that to the attention of district officials, because it may be something that they just were not aware of. Making sure that students are educated and are aware of what they can do to report, making sure that staff is aware, so providing trainings, providing examples of what racism does to students, and really breaking down internalized racism as well as just the long-term effects that racism can impact our students to help hopefully build empathy.
And so I think it's really important, especially as a white woman, that I'm constantly learning and growing and open to change. I think one of the most important things I can do to be a social justice advocate for my students is just hear their voice, make sure that I'm living in a way and working in a way where I'm empowering them to use their voice, making sure that students feel included, that they're accepted. We try to have clubs to help students feel connected. We have our Black Student Union, our Latinx Club, the Gay Straight Alliance, any club that the students would like to run, definitely we can do, but generally those ones we like to try to keep. We try to make sure that we have curriculum that's including a spectrum of genders, that it's including women in leadership roles, that it's including names from different cultures, and that when cultures are represented, that they aren't always associated with a certain behavior, so that the protagonist isn't always, one culture and the antagonist is another culture, that we vary those things so that students can see themselves in positive ways.
Having success as a student is really understanding how to navigate a big system such as ours. We're a school of over 2,400 students, and many times students come from smaller environments and kind of thrown out to the wolves, and they're not sure how to advocate for themselves. So it's teaching them basic executive functioning skills, but more importantly, really developing rapport to get to know the student, the family, and where they're coming from, so that you build relationships and you build trust, so that you really work with that student, not 1 year, but through the 4 years that they're with you, so that you become a strong advocate, especially during the time that they're looking to apply to colleges, military, employment, interviews, job employment. It's a wide range of skills that we work with students, and teaching them that we're not a paper pusher. That's really been our challenge as counselors.
Some school counselors have successfully integrated the tenets of social justice into their work.
So in regards to social emotional learning, career counseling and college counseling, academic advising, social justice work is really the dismantling of systems that are not serving our students.
I think the pandemic opened up a lot of just the systemic issues and a lot of emotional issues that have been bubbling up inside homes, because students are now tackling that whatever was going on in their family dynamics, and then coming back and adjusting to a new, very westernized school system, and seeing the differences I think has been very jarring for a lot of students. And being a school counselor, I am able to have those conversations with them to help make sense of it and to provide that compassion and that bridge for them.
Most of my research focuses on strategies for working more effectively with culturally and linguistically diverse children and adolescents. And so years ago, I developed a counseling model on how we broach or bring up, discuss issues really related to race, ethnicity, and culture. In many counseling settings, people can talk about anything. They can talk about academics, they can talk about grief and loss, they can talk about death and dying, they could talk about career development, but people often have a difficult time talking about race, ethnicity, and culture. And so I've created a framework that allows counselors to talk about race, ethnicity, and culture with students. When we think about students from marginalized groups, if we only have a mainstream focus, we don't really understand what it means for a child to be an immigrant, what it means for a child to be a refugee, what it means for a child to come into a school setting and not to be fully accepted, to be asked to anglicize their names, to have parents who speak a language other than English, and to try to manage and maneuver in settings that aren't hospitable to non-English speakers. And so, how do we give children opportunities to talk about their experience, and not just so that they're venting, but so that our understanding will shape our ability to put in place those supports and interventions that will better help children survive.
But in San Jose, the school that I work at really believes in social justice as a way to connect with students. It's this like blending of constructivism and kind of like reform pedagogy that really puts students at the center of it. And because they're at the center of it, counselors are asked to serve the whole child. And that's where you see that difference, right? Like in a more traditional school, the expectation is that they raise children to become adults that are believing in similar things that the adults believed in. Where here, it's really about like, where is it that this child's at? Where is it that this child is really situated right now? And let's take that out and really connect them to the social justice work that's here in our community. And we have school counselors in different roles, right? And like official roles and non-official roles that really focus on understanding the whole child.
One success that I've experienced recently surrounding a social justice issue is advocating for our transgender students in PE, the PE locker room, and in PE activities. And so largely it was creating a system with our PE department and our office staff and school really to bring gender neutral changing areas for our students. And also we're still working on finding lockers for them to hold their space so that they don't have to carry around an extra duffel bag or exchange their clothes in the main office. So just kind of creating that seamless process and also communicating with families wherever their student was in terms of the coming out process and navigating that carefully as well while respecting each student's just identity exploration at this age.
The type of counseling that I do here, I'll come in and I might have a kid that's going through some stuff and I'll take them out of class and we'll go for a walk. We'll go sit under a tree and I'll have them connect with the earth. I'll have them take off their shoes and put their shoes on the earth and just to feel the energy before we even talk. Like I don't jump into what the problem is. I jump into their physical, you could see how someone feels in their body. If they're like this or they're like this. I pay attention to those things.
School counselors can find success when they intentionally participate in building a system wherein school counselors can effectively advocate for social justice and equity for all students.
Be going through some things and that is rowdy, and I'll take them outside and I have boxing gloves and mitts, and we have a punching bag, and I'll take a kid and let them unleash on the punching bag until they feel. I've had a kid break down and cry while punching, and then we sit down and talk and they unleash, right? Or I'll take a kid and we'll go outside and we'll go for a jog around the block. And once they get those endorphins going, and it'll change their whole mood because they're stuck sitting down all day and they're not getting their heart rate up, they're not in touch with their body. it messes with our head. So for me, I do a lot of things like that. Physical, I also will sit down and have a kid lie down and I'll play some singing bowls and meditate and guide them through a meditation, because there's so many different ways and not everything works for every kid. Sometimes kids, I'll be like, hey, so what do you want to do? I just need to walk. Or we'll go to the bridge over there and there's a moving body of water and we'll just stand in front of that moving body of water without even saying a word, and the kid will look up at me and go, I feel better. And then we'll just walk back to class. So, I mean, there's so many different ways to get in touch with these youth, and especially we need to look at these different ways, especially these days because times are so different. These kids are stuck on their phones. They're not getting 1 ounce of affection. Some of them aren't. When they get home, they go to their room and they're just in there for hours, and then they come to school with all this emotion and then they act out, and then we think they have a problem. They don't have the problem. It's what's going on in their life that's the problem. So I highly recommend thinking outside of the box and using every tool in your arsenal, because these kids need you and they need a lot more love than they're receiving.
They have a story that contributed to who they are. And if I'm privileged to be invited into their story and to play a small role, what an honor, right? And so being respectful of that and knowing that the individual in front of you is really the expert on themselves, right? And so instead of making assumptions, many times rooted on stereotypes, right? It's like, no, let me ask my student, respect who they are. And I want to know more about that so that together we can move in whatever direction they feel that they want that conversation to go, or how to access that service that they're looking for.
I've had a lot of opportunities to advocate for students and family for social justice. I've taken kids on marches. I've taken kids on a 500-mile Native American spiritual marathon, where we run for different things that are going on in the indigenous communities, those injustices, and also for Mother Earth. And those ones are the biggest ones for me. I like to teach kids about what we're doing to Mother Earth. And I think if they can connect with the planet that we live on and see the injustices that we're doing to Mother Earth, that it'll change the way they look at themselves, because there's only one planet, there's only one us, so that connection is huge, I think. So I like to really connect them to that, so they can go out after this. I mean, this is middle school, so they have tons of life left. I want to see them go out and make a change and give back to this planet, because Mother Earth has given us so much.
Overall, I just want to see school counselors not working in isolation, right? School counselors working together with teachers. So, and again, right, that it's a two-way road, right? It's easier said than done, right? Because that's going to take an effort from the teacher's perspective as well, too. But just closing us in on the loop and just kind of working together when it comes to social justice.
One strategy used by some school counselors is to effectively align social justice goals with the goals of the school.
The best way for people who might feel like, I don't know where to start, or I've tried a little bit and I get a lot of pushback and I don't want to lose my job and I don't know what to do next, is to look at the school improvement plan and think about what are the goals of your school, what are the goals of your administrator, and how will changing these inequities actually support that goal. So I feel like, every administrator wants their students to do well and wants students to succeed, wants grades to be higher and attendance to be higher and discipline to be down. So if we can really reframe it in a way that's like, this is what our students need to reach these goals that you have for them, I think that can be a really great entry point, particularly for beginning work, to start some movement. And then once you get some kind of initial response going, then, and you build your political capital within the school, because if you're new to the profession or new to the school, You had to sort of build that trust that people have in you and build your political capital, like amongst your colleagues, that then you have a little bit more capacity to start pushing against things that might be a little bit trickier for people to respond to.
Luckily at this school, the principal has given me a lot of freedom. And especially if it has to do with our kids here, I can pretty much go at bat with a full arsenal for these kids, and I'm allowed to, which is amazing because I know a lot of other schools have a lot of red tape. And if it comes to our kids here, we treat them like our family, and we really care deeply. I mean, I'll call home. I have kids that text me on the weekends that send me messages and things that they're going through and they need advice. I'm always available for them. And I know at some other schools that would be a taboo, but I feel like these kids, they need someone that's there 24/7 because sometimes they don't have anybody.
There's a lot of work to be done, and there's enough for all of us. And so being part of a team or being part of a community that is striving to make things better for young people, but also for us as adults, you know, for the world, is something that I want to be a part of, and that I hope other school counselors feel that same calling to, you know, roll up your sleeves and let's get to work, because there's a lot of work to be done.
The call to action is loud and clear. In order to serve all students, all school counselors must approach their work with an equity lens, intentionally embed social justice in all that they do, and find and build support in each other, as well as in other school personnel, in order to champion the hard work of challenging and dismantling racist systems.
The degree to which school counselors are involved in and participating in involving social justice work in their school counseling, I think intentionally, it certainly needs to grow. I think that many school counselors are unintentionally doing this work and doing social justice work that they believe is important around certain domains, such as, you know, maybe social emotional learning, maybe advocating for, you know, women of color to be more involved in computer science and kind of these very specific examples of how many school counselors are already doing the work. But I think in terms of embedding social justice work in every single aspect of school counseling, I think that is not done quite as much. And so, you know, part of that, I believe, is really in our training and needing to be trained very well in making social justice work and school counseling work intentional.
It's not the degree that matters. Many times life experience can be more helpful. Somebody who has gone through what these kids have gone through is going to be in many cases much more effective. It's people who are showing every day genuine caring about the student, genuine love, genuine desire to help, genuine desire to understand, and that are going to be effective.
I believe now the role of really being an emancipatory leader in education for school counselors is primary. I think that school counselors really need to see themselves as agents of change for K-12 students, for families, and for their school communities. And that piece of advocacy, I think, has gone from sort of unsung in the field of school counseling to really taking kind of a center stage role. And I think now more than ever, it's an important piece of the role of the K-12 school counselor.
What I would like school counselors or any listeners to keep in mind when thinking about social justice advocacy really is that it happens in every way, small, medium, and large, with a student, an individual, with the whole system, with the community. And I think the more we practice our social justice work, the better we get at it. And I think that as long as school counselors are keeping in mind what is best for students, and making sure that we're identifying our own bias and our own privilege and understanding how that influences our work and how we can really interrupt the behaviors and beliefs that we hold that don't serve students, I think that the work can really shine through in the way that it needs to be a benefit to all students. And so, everything from creating a bulletin board to speaking at a board meeting is social justice work. And as long as school counselors keep that in mind, I think we can feel more nourished than burdened by our responsibilities.